Hello and welcome to this week's What Were They Thinking? The first story regards a mystery illness causing paralysis in children across the United States of America. In a recent study, small traces of RNA from a virus called enterovirus D68 was found in a large proportion of patients. An even larger proportion were able to show antibodies to this virus. Importantly, the antibodies were found in spinal fluid, where you would generally not find them. The reason this is so stunning is that enterovirus D68 is known to cause paralysis, but historically there has been almost no evidence of its presence in cases it has been diagnosed in. The study that found these antibodies and RNA fragments had only 14 patients, too few to be definitive, but certainly a very large sign given the rarity of the disease. A new investigation used 42 participants. These children had been diagnosed with AFM. AFM is acute flaccid myelitis. This is the condition that the enterovirus D68 causes. This larger study found that again, most of the patients presented with antibodies or RNA fragments. However, they have yet to find the whole virus. This is important as the condition has doubled every year since the first diagnosis was made in 2012. This was coupled with the enterovirus's D68 diagnoses from 2014 that were associated with severe respiratory infections. The corresponding outbreak of both an increase in these diagnoses and the AFM diagnoses leads many researchers to believe there is a strong correlation, and now there is genetic and immunological evidence to support that. Animal models from 2017 demonstrate the virus is capable of causing paralysis, which only further reinforces this point. In less mysterious news, the FDA has issued an instruction that manufacturers of breast implants are to include warnings about the possible adverse effects from using these products on the packaging. There are possible side effects to breast implants. They are rare and include things like cancer. Understand, a warning on the packaging like this is the FDA's strictest caution that can be issued. They also believe that patients should be given a list of things to check with their surgeon and physician before proceeding with the implant surgery. This all comes from a wide-ranging number of complaints from both patients and advocacy groups who believe that women are not fully informed of the risks. Each year, about 400,000 surgeries are conducted in the United States of America, with 75% of these being cosmetic in nature. The remaining 25% can be for things like reconstructive surgery. As a result of this very large number, there is also a proportionately large number of adverse and negative experiences. These then get reported on social media, to which thousands then have access to, which magnifies the effect of the adverse effects. This, coupled with the correlation with some rare cancers, has led to a lot of outcry and litigation against surgeons and manufacturers. The most significant of these relates to a 2011 onwards monitoring program that has found 573 cases worldwide linked to breast implants, but nearly all specifically to a textured implant which has since been recalled. Despite the recall, at least 33 women are said to have died from a breast plant-related cancer called anaplastic large cell lymphoma. The FDA is now asking for input from the public on this issue, as they've released what they consider their final recommendations, but they may amend them depending upon the feedback received. In another example of revising decisions, what was once considered a failed Alzheimer's drug is now being re-evaluated, and the manufacturers are seeking approval for more advanced clinical trials after it was reanalyzed. The drug is called aducanumab and is an antibody therapy that targets the amyloid beta bundles that build up in the brain and cause dysfunction. This application comes in stark contrast to the historical lack of any applications to the FDA. This means there are only a small number of drugs available that can help to alleviate symptoms and prospectively slow down degradation, but there has been nothing that either treats Alzheimer's nor anything new in the last 16 years. The whole conundrum with this begins with the fact that the company was running a trial, but it was being externally monitored. The external monitors felt that the trial had not reached its goals and was showing no promise, and called for it to be stopped. This meant that the study was effectively halted. However, the follow-up evaluations that came in the months after this study was officially stopped found that there was beneficial results in one cohort but not the other. In other news related to the discovery of inventions, a scientist working for Unilever many years ago has won a £2 million payout after Unilever created a large profit from his work. Professor Ian Shanks is said to have created the first of the glucose detectors used in just about every device in the world now. He's been seeking compensation for his discovery for 13 years. The initial design was based on a simple electrochemical capillary. Simple by modern standards, but at the time it was groundbreaking. He was able to develop a prototype at home using glass slides from a toy microscope kit. He then took this prototype to his employer, who informed him that they now owned it. In industries like this, it is not necessarily an uncommon event to find that there are terms in contracts that work that you create whilst employed for a company belongs to that company, regardless of where and when it was made, so long as it is revealed whilst you are employed by them. This is why Unilever was able to drive £24 million in licensing and other fees from the invention. However, Shanks received no portion of this whatsoever. Justice Kitchen has said that the professor was entitled to a fair share of the benefits seen by the company. This is despite accepting that Unilever owned the rights to his invention. The reason this has come down the way it is that Unilever enjoyed substantial and significant rewards that were generated at no significant risk, reflected a very high rate of return, and stood out in comparison with the benefit Unilever derived from other patents. The Unilever spokesman has responded stating that they're disappointed given that he did receive a salary, bonuses, and benefits as part of his employment, and in knowledge of the rules and agreements regarding any of his inventions, particularly those that were developed as new products for the business. This entire situation is a case of the courts having to balance both the benefits to the company and the reward to the individual for what they have done for said company. In an example of outcomes not meeting intended expectations, Qatar is now trying to air condition a number of its outdoor areas, such as stadiums, malls, and shopping centers. Fundamentally, this is not a problematic idea, except Qatar derives most of its energy from fossil fuels. These fossil fuels drive global warming, which in turn increases the temperature of Qatar on average. This creates a circular motion, where every time they try and reduce the temperature, it will only make it worse in the long term. This rather desperate gambit by Qatar is a product of the incredibly high heats in these areas, sometimes upwards of 48 degrees Celsius, which, in practical terms, is uninhabitable and ultimately puts the health of residents at risk. With the solution as it stands now, it's not likely to produce desirable results in the long term. However, if Qatar could turn around and go down the path of renewable energy, there is prospective allowance that over time it would actually have the desired effect. In slightly more disturbing news, Google's claim of quantum supremacy appears to have passed muster. In a recently published article in Nature, they explain how they have developed a technology that allows complex computational tasks to be completed in minutes using their system, but would require more than 10,000 years to run using contemporary standard computing technology. This claim does not go without challenge. One of the greatest detractors is IBM, who in fact provided the hardware for the supercomputer used in the experiment. They argue that the way the entire experiment was designed unfortunately biased the results in favor of Google's system. They say that if it were designed efficiently and effectively, rather than taking 10,000 years, it would only be 2.5 days. This is still 2.5 days versus 3 minutes. In astronomical news, NASA has been unable to find any evidence of India's crashed lunar lander, the Chandrayaan-2. The space agencies have been poring over lunar data, trying to find the remains of the crashed vehicle. Flybys in September have provided no visual evidence, and the nature of the pictures taken have made it that much harder to find. During the crash, India's space agency was unable to make contact with the lander and have no idea where its final resting place is, and as a result, it could be buried in shadows or somewhere they don't even know where to look. As a result, it may remain unfound for a very long time. Next is some news about animals that will make you say no. A video making the rounds on Twitter was showing a coral snake eating a rat snake while being attacked by yellow jacket wasps. Any one of these alone would be an unpleasant surprise to find in your backyard. The University of Florida employee simply recorded photos and videos of the first attempt before the coral snake was chased away by the yellow jacket. Later on, it tried again. In other animal research-related news, scientists have been able to teach rats how to drive small electric cars. The University of Richmond lab did this to try and understand how rats would learn to drive. They used Fruit Loops as a reward for the rats successfully performing the task. Every time they moved the vehicle, they received their reward, and the researchers gradually moved the reward further and further away. Each of the rats learned how to drive their vehicle in a different way, which was influenced by the type of environment the rats were in. Complex and stimulating environments enhanced learning, whilst dreary and boring environments slowed it down. The research is being used to argue that the rat brain has greater plasticity than currently thought, and that observation of rats could be more useful in studying the effects of Parkinson's disease. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.